right. Keep an eye on the chat here. Well, we have quite a turnout here. We're see the people joining. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there was a big Zoom outage yesterday afternoon. So, my gosh, I'm glad we didn't do it yesterday afternoon.
Mhm.
Yeah, have 1 o'clock. I'll give the uh, the attendees a couple more minutes, and then we'll get started. Just want to do a quick check, gentlemen. You could see the PowerPoint presentation, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, this is being recorded, so for those late stragglers, we'll actually be sending out a link to this. So I say let's get started if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, we're
Yep.
ready.
All right. Excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, contractors, builders, decision makers, welcome to a conversation that just might shift how you lead and grow. My name is Bruce Orr, CEO of Pronovos, and today we're not just here to talk data, we're here to talk power. The power of financial intelligence, the power of making smart moves before it's too late, because gut instinct is good, but gut instinct without data, that's just guessing with confidence. Now, before we dive in, let me introduce two heavy hitters joining me today. First, we got Brian, a CPA and CCIFP, who's seen behind the curtains of hundreds of construction companies. He knows what makes the numbers work and what happens when they don't. He's not just an accountant, he's a strategic partner for growth. Brian, I'll let you say a little something about yourself.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, I'm a director on our construction and A&E team at CBiz, and as Bruce mentioned, work with lots of contractors, both from the general contractor down to the specialty contractor space. We help with their, financial statements, but also do a lot of advisory and consulting work in the space as well. I'm happy to be here and talk on this topic and look forward to our conversation.
I love it. I love it. Well, and then we've got Kevin, a senior project manager. He's been out there in the field with the chaos, manpower, scheduling, vendors, surprises. He's learned the hard way to stop flying blind. And Kevin's figured out how to use data to lead with confidence, not guesswork. And Kevin, hey man, I'm so excited to have you join us on this webinar. Please give a little intro about yourself.
Bruce, thanks for having me. For one, I'm excited to be here to be part of this talk. Man, starting from the field of screwdrivers and hammers and wrenches and everything in my hands to doing what I'm doing now, I come to find out that the data and the financial strategies that you can put into play can help you be very successful in the industry. And having those resources available to you will just transcend how you manage a project from start to finish. So as I go through the chaos every day, there's nothing more at the end of the day than coming back and looking at the financials and helping make those easy decisions easier, so to say.
I love it. I love it. Well, again, I'm excited to have you, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot. Today, we'll walk you through real world examples, and we'll also look at some of the technology within Pronovos. We're going to show you how to turn gut instincts into financial smart decisions. So I invite you to ask questions, drop comments, and don't worry, We'll send the recording if you need to head out early. Before we get started, I'm just going to launch a poll just to get to know who we have in the audience. So please, if you wouldn't mind, take a minute and just tell us what kind of organization you come from. All right, we have a fair number of general contractors here. All right, while that poll is still getting underway, I'd like to take a moment and talk about the learning objectives. So here's what we're unpacking today. While relying on gut alone isn't enough, what metrics matters most, how to turn job site data into smart decisions, and how to build a team culture that lives financial visibility. Because once your team sees it, guys, they can't unsee it, right? Once they understand the numbers, they'll lead stronger, faster, and smarter. And, if I go to the next slide, let me be real with you. I've seen smart contractors lose money, not because they were lazy or reckless, but because they didn't have visibility into the numbers. They made decisions based on gut and got blindsided by reality. You want to scale? You got to stop flying blind, because when you're scaling blind, every decision feels like a gamble. Brian, you've worked with dozens of contractors. What do you see when companies rely too much on gut?
Well, probably the biggest thing is that you don't see consistency across the enterprise between project managers because there's not a documented process. There's not consistent approaches. So then, you've got, without the data, your project managers relying on, their past, and then others can't see that. So there's, not they're making decisions based on previous instances, maybe instead of what the data for that particular job is, or not having that information.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've been told many times over and over again that that every job is unique, and while I believe that to be true, there's a lot of commonality from job to job. So with that gut instinct, yeah, it might feel like your gut is going to help you manage the uniqueness of jobs, but data also can show you the commonalities. So I appreciate that, Brian. And Kevin, I'm kind of curious, what did your gut instinct look like before or for you before you had the data?
Uh, Gut instinct's always been tough for me because you're always weighing the human capital side of things because I'm the one that affects and that's where a lot of money is made out in the field, right? Is that human capital. So until I was able to get my hands on data to where I could understand how things are being built, what my materials run is, how the life cycle of the project is moving, and where I can turn my profitability. The hardest thing was for me to focus on the human capital side of my projects. So people would come and go. And now that I've ingrained into those thought process of like, hey, let's use this information, show you how it looks on the back end, how we tell the story, and how easy it becomes. So gut instincts originally were just like, I think this is the way we do it. Let's try and move a little bit that direction and see what happens. But now I've got data on the backside that says, no, we're going to go this way, and it's we'll figure it out from there. But it helps make those decisions easier, and I can work with those people better.
You
Hopefully that
know,
makes sense.
it does. It does. One of the things I struggle with, Kevin, is you have different types of PMs. You have project managers that, they want to do their best. They show up to get the job done, and they dislike change. I'm not going to go out on a limb and say, hey, you like change, Kevin, but there was a reason why you changed. And I'm kind of curious, what drove that reason? Why did you decide that you wanted to do something different?
Well, just it comes from my background. I'm a big believer in being comfortable and being uncomfortable. And when it comes to financial metrics, I really didn't know much 4 or 5 years ago, and I started diving into some just mediocre reading about construction financial management. And then all of a sudden it just took off, and I realized it just made life easier understanding it. And it's hard because there's so many moving parts. I'm not a perfectionist at any means on it as a project manager, but I understand what I need to be tracking and how it makes my life easier. And once we understand that and not afraid of it, it's easy. But looking at numbers becomes scary to some project managers because we put things together, right? That's what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, let's pull up a dashboard to show what that shift looks like in action. These are going to be live indicators that highlight risk, like cost overruns, aging receivables, labor variance, and we're gonna dive into this. So let's see. Here's a real dashboard. This is the landing page, if you will, for project managers. And as I talk to hundreds of contractors across the United States, I really focus a lot more on the PMs because, as Kevin just said, they are going to make or break a company. And so, Kevin, from your perspective, how should project managers use this type of information to catch early warning signs? And listen, you're familiar with the system. If you need me to navigate to a different area, it has drill downs. So I'm just curious. Let's talk about warning signs.
So for me, I think starting out is right. We got our projected profit margin. We see that, right? It's right front up center. So we can see what we have in a job and how we're going to get out of it. Then I go to, okay, billing and things of that nature. Now, if my profit margin, I think as a project manager, starts slipping backwards, why does it do that? And a lot of reasons I look at is my change orders, right? How are my change orders affecting this project as a whole? If that makes sense. And I'll probably say, Alex, that's like one of my go-tos, is if that makes sense. So are my margins slipping on that side of things with the change orders? Who knows? It's the hardest thing to track because sometimes as the PM, we're getting pushed to get things done, but yet we haven't had a true approval. So how do you navigate that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what I would look at in here is if my job costs are climbing and I don't have change orders accepted, that would be two things that I look at. Right there's the change orders: what's approved, what's estimated, what's pending, and what's been rejected. And is that reflected up into my job cost to dates yet, or is it just sitting on the pending side?
Got it. Got it. Um, I'm kind of curious. What I've been hearing a lot lately is the project managers, their bonus incentives are more and more being tied to how they operate a project, like the CEO of the project, if you will. And billings and receivables, I don't think has always been historically part of incentives, but again, Kevin, I know that you are familiar with Pronovos and you've used it, but when it comes to billings, and let's put your CEO hat on, with this project, I'm kind of curious to hear when you know that there's some delinquency that's happening on invoices for your client. Um, what have you found to be a good process to keep the relationship whole, right? No one wants to talk about, hey, you owe us this money, it's 90 days, overdue. And like what have you done in the past to try to ensure that, you're being the best steward of the company but yet also maintaining a good relationship with your client.
Well, I think the biggest thing is as as a subcontractor in a general, I don't want to cash flow any project, right? So I need to make sure that I'm billing aggressively, and how are we doing that and making sure that it's done properly, right? Because there is such thing as overbilling too much, right? And
Mhm.
becoming confliction inside of a relationship between a general contractor. So understanding what my costs are to date and how I'm going to build that out, and then driving that cost or that payable down, right? So how long is it taking them to pay me? And as long as we can have honest relationships or honest conversations with people, I think it becomes easy to say. And how do you do that if you don't know the metrics or if you don't know exactly what's going on? Yeah, I could just say, hey, man, I billed you a lot and I don't think you've paid us in probably 75 days. Well, is there data to prove that? Or is it just hearsay? Is it gut instinct, right? Is it feel?
Yeah.
And then
Hey,
who? Yeah, go ahead.
Kevin, I would say, would you agree, I guess, in this that probably the one metric that from your side, from the project manager's side, that oftentimes is left off is, how quickly you are getting paid, or where is your cash position of cash received compared to your cost, just to make sure that you're even covering your cost. Oftentimes you'll get, okay, what your receivable is, or maybe what, what you've billed, I guess, on the project, but there isn't that overlying data of, okay, here's our total cost, here's what we've received, to know whether you are, using the project to finance itself, or whether the company is using some of its working capital to finance, the project.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think one thing that's lacking a lot is understanding where that break even point is. And this goes back to project kickoffs, right? If break even points at, if I know the break even point, there's projecting it is at, let's just say the project is at 6 months. As a project manager, my goal is to drive that break even point back to 5 months, back to 3 months, and just keep driving it backwards. But we don't have those conversations because a lot of times we're not tracking those metrics, Brian.
Right.
I,
Yeah.
I love, and that is a good point that you brought up, Brian. What I really like about relying more on metrics and less on gut feel is it often takes the subjectivity out of the equation. So if you need to have a difficult conversation with your client about receivables, and you have something like this to say, hey, our contract basically says you need to be paying us within 45 days, but we have an average days to pay of 62. Is this what we should be expecting, or are you unaware of? Let's have a conversation and talk about it, right? It's not, in anything to put someone on, like the fence, right? It's like, hey, this is just the number. These are the numbers. Let's talk. Brian, from your perspective as a CPA, how are you interpreting the same data from a strategic perspective? And I know we're at a job level, and I know you typically are looking at the enterprise, but I know you also do things related to um, fade analysis. So I'm just kind of curious, you know, what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, if we're looking from it from an operational point, is kind of where we're going today. And what I would say is, you really want to make sure that you're paying attention to, you know, how far, I guess, out ahead you're getting in cost compared to what you're receiving. Because there again, if you aren't billing timely, or you're not getting receipt of that cash, you're basically going to have to use some other source to fund that project. And that's either going to be borrowing on a line of credit, that's going to be from another job that is overbilled, or, worst case, maybe even an owner having to inject more money into the business, right? So
Mhm.
managing cash flow is a key thing for a contractor to make sure that, they have operational funds, to run the business. I mean, like you were just showing, if it's taking us, let's say 62 days to collect on this, well, we all know that your employees want to be paid either paid weekly, right? So you
Mhm.
could be, anywhere from 30 to 40 days in addition to that 62 of cash outlay business, right? So you're talking about, a significant, 90 days before you're getting paid. That's a significant amount of time between whenever you're outlaying the cash compared to whenever you're getting it back. So that's why the overbilling and managing the cash receipts and receivables and collections is such an important piece of the equation.
When you work with companies, Brian, and you're focused more on the operational side, and I think that you are probably the best person I can ask this question of, what trends, sorry, let me rephrase my question. What trends are you seeing as it relates to the responsibility of PMs that's relatively new? Again, I talked about receivables and the PMs being more responsible for that. Are there any other trends that you're seeing that you could tell us about? And if not, that's fine. I know this is a left ball, a left.
No, I mean, I think typically, the PMs aren't brought in until you're at that stage where you're 62 days out, right? And they're
Mhm.
like, oh, we should have been paid. And, the accounting team and them have tried to do what they can. And so now it's more of a relationship and that harder conversation like you're talking about. But what I would say is if with the power of data, if they know that on their next billing a little bit quicker, or if they know, kind of like what we said, that we're behind on our cash position, maybe they would push them, pick up the phone or do something a little different on that next billing rather than letting it go two billing cycles or something, before they have that conversation. So I think it's more of the availability of data that would drive, additional follow-up and conversations more so than what it has been in the past.
Yeah. So I see what's happening here. It's not just about tracking. It's also about taking action. I think that's what I'm hearing from you,
Yeah,
Brian, from you,
right.
Kevin. We need to take action. Um, there's this thing that I kind of think of when, as you were talking, I was reflecting on it. I believe leaders can coach, PMs they can course correct, and execs they can make faster decisions. And I think that all of that happens when you have good information. And so, you know, speaking of information, the acronym KPI has been around for a long time. And I think everyone will call, any number a KPI. I think we should stop calling everything a KPI. Some KPIs are just vanity numbers. What what you need are impact metrics, the ones that move profit and protect cash. Brian, can you share 3 to 5 KPIs every PM should be tracking? Yeah, I love
Yeah.
to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of got these up here, we all probably look at gross margin, but one would be, is the gross margin above or below what the company average is, right? So not just necessarily that project, but how is it trending towards the company average? So that would be one. Projecting what's the profitability of the project? Are you have zero fade? I mean, everybody's goal should be to have zero fade on a project, right? That's where having a handoff meeting, if you have an estimating department different from your project manager, that is such an important meeting to make sure that everybody's on the same playing field, right? Because if that handoff meeting doesn't happen and there's a disagreement between the parties, then you're going to have the pointing of fingers of who's responsible or whatnot, whenever something happens. So that's an important metric. Project on time delivery. Are we on schedule? Have we got our resources in place? Are we, if we're a general contractor, are we driving our subcontractors to perform so that way our, schedule is staying on track with what it should? And then safety, nobody wants any events, so what are we doing there? What I would say about these KPIs, we've got a mix here. One and two are financial metrics, right? They're data-driven financial metrics. And those are what we would call lagging whenever we look at KPIs. The latter two are more activity based or something to perform, right? And when we look at KPIs, we want to have these activity based that are more of a leading indicator as opposed to a lagging indicator. Because the profit margin and the profitability, that's going to tell you the score, right? What's happened after it's already done. There's not really much I can
Mhm.
influence on it after it's done. But, the project on time delivery and safety, those are things that are going on, during the game or during the project. And what can we influence on those that are going to actually drive our profit margin to stay above average or not to have the fade? So if we're doing those activities, then we should have the results that we're expecting. So that's where whenever we look at KPIs, we kind of take another little different approach because a lot of times whenever you in the market talk about KPIs, everybody's thinking of a financial or some type of metric that is really lagging. And those are great because you have to measure things.
Mhm.
But if I'm really trying to drive growth or drive business, I need to know that my people are doing the activities that are going to influence that metric, right? Because if I'm just always saying, I want all my jobs to have a 10% margin, go out and do it. Well, their activities are going to be all over the place, right? Because you don't have a roadmap. But if I
Yeah.
go out and say, okay, we want to have a 10% margin on all of our jobs, here are the activities that we've designed that we believe should take place to achieve that 10%. And then you get Kevin in the room and say, hey, Kevin, are we on the right track of the metrics, that we should put in place to measure to make sure we're hitting that 10%? Then you're starting to, have a process, have driven activities that are going to really drive people to get to that result.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of curious, Kevin, after listening to Brian, can you share a real world example of how tracking a specific metric helped you avoid a financial surprise?
Um, you know, for me, one of the things that I track the most is how my material is getting procured onto the job. Because if I can manage that, then I'm going to manage my hours on the backside by KPI number three on the screen there, right? Project on time delivery. But on the front end, if I can get those materials ordered under certain purchasing parameters and then control that, then the scheduling happens naturally by trade, if that makes sense. It's a little goofy way, but that's one of the things that I focus on majority of the time. Is can I get that material procured? Can I get it billed properly? Now I've got a little bit of cash flow, and now I can show that I've got this stuff. Now I'm seeing progress, and I'm hitting that on time delivery. So that's where I spend a lot of my time is trying to focus on that purchasing side of things to affect that.
Well, it's interesting that you are saying that now that we have the potential of, tariffs in a lot of different countries that could impact the cost of things. Again, this is left field here, but what are you doing anything differently now to try and sort of avoid the price escalations? I assume you're probably more focused on buying material.
I am. What I want to do is I want to get 80 to 85% of my materials procured for the job right up front. Okay. But I also have to understand this is going to go in way too much project management side of things that we don't need to discuss here, but understand the contract and how I can bill for that material, right? If I have to keep it here, how I got to keep it on site, where that goes, how I can get paid for that. But I want to get 80 to 85% of that material before my guy basically starts 5% of the work. And the reason I want that is because if I can gear him on that 80%, I've already got 20% savings. And if he can get the job done, at 75. Now I've got 25% savings, right? So what am I doing for tariffs? I'm getting a lot of stuff done now. So a lot of purchasing, getting things moving. It's going to be make sure that I can store it properly and bill it properly, and it's no skin off my back. But anything that's in limbo right now, I'm pushing for submittals and approvals and getting those things done because I have to wage risk. You're right. Do I
Yeah.
wait? Do I wait for those tariffs to hit me, or do I just go ahead and pull the trigger, what have you? So
Yeah.
I don't think there's any right answer to that. I think you have to wage your own risk on that one, so to say.
Yeah, no, I understand. You know, Kevin, I was thinking about a comment that you made a few weeks ago when we were talking about this webinar, and you know, there was something that you mentioned about the CFO not really understanding what their goals are in terms of billing and just trying to the CFO trying to put the company in the ideal sort of cash position. But I'm curious, whenever I think of like WIP, work in progress schedules, I always think of the accounting team being, the owners of it, which they are, right? They own the WIP. But when you are project manager and you have multiple projects that you're juggling, you need something that might be similar to a WIP to help you manage. Um, in your past experience, how likely has it been that you or any other PMs are share this type of information? And this is the Pronovo's WIP, but I'm just kind of curious: is this something that you are seeing that's readily given to PMs, or is this still tucked away within the accounting group?
It's tucked away within the accounting group. As time has gone on, I'm starting to see more freedom into it, so to say, but it's still very tight-lipped to the accounting team. And I think it's very critical for us to understand this portion of it, because what we want to understand for our purpose, right, as the project manager, our job is to get the finished product, get billed, and pay the bills, right? We're the heartbeat of the company. So we need to make sure that's flowing. What is our CFO's goals? What he wants to focus on? Do we want to be a cash rich company? Do we want to be a revenue rich company? Where do we want to be? How much working capital do we want to use? Where do we need to focus? And that changes. I mean, I'm not an accountant, so I'm just going to say this,
Mhm.
but that changes, I believe, almost every quarter, if not every month. It changes up and down a little bit, right? But
Yeah.
it changes relatively quick. And this is something that I think every project manager, even though it looks scary, should be accustomed to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bruce,
And
what I would add to this conversation to what Kevin was saying is that I would say historically, project managers are getting what we call cost to completes. They get them once a month, and it's a paper document that's given to them from the accounting department without drill downs. Well, with what your technology has here, you can drill down layers within it just by, without having to ask for another report or having to ask for additional details, right? It's readily available to you. And I think being able to do that throughout the month rather than waiting to the end of the month or the hecticness of, hey, project accountant, can you run this report for me, and having to wait for them to send it to you or, be on their whim or, whatever that would be. That is I guess I'm going to say the beauty of having the data, in a product like Pronovos or so readily available is it's more dynamic than it is static, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's the power there is it also increases efficiency and time, right? Because as I'm thinking about it, I can get that data right now and I can make a decision where before if I get something and then I have to go back and ask a question and then I might get it a day later, then I got to remember, it's like those things can make things move fast. Everything's moving faster. So it just helps, in the decision making and the process and everything being done a little bit more effective and efficient.
Yeah, uh, I definitely follow you, Brian. Again, we talked about it's so timely because this is about, gut instinct and trying to have data, relying more on data. So um, when you have multiple jobs that you're running as a PM, and you are responsible for providing accuracy around your projections. um, I think what I've heard in the past is the PMs, they kind of look at this as just a task of a thing to get done. And truly, when you're considering the planning phase of all of this, like planning, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily happen at the beginning of the project. I think there's ongoing planning and revising that you have to do, because every time you make an adjustment, every time you forecast, every month you forecast, what happens is you're basically saying, I got money that I'm going to spend to complete this job, but we never know when this money is going to be spent unless you go through the painstaking effort of aligning it month over month over month. What we've seen in terms of change in process is the savvy PMs like Kevin here. Not only is he trying to understand what's going on, like what the goals of the CFO is, he's trying to support them based on those goals. And so when you are able to take $1.5 million in cost complete and say, I'm going to spend this $1.5 million over the life of this job, this is planning in its purest form. Maybe I'm not looking at cost. Maybe I'm looking at profit or revenue. And when you have a tool that is going to do the heavy work for you, I think that is very important. And, Brian, from your point of view, how does forecast accuracy build trust with like lenders and sureties and execs? Because while I labeled or I called out these three types of construction partners, lenders, sureties, and we could even say bankers, it all starts with the project manager. So, how does this accuracy build trust?
It goes a long way, Bruce, because the people that you mentioned, they're gonna do what, spread out your financial data over, a period of time, even up to 10 years, and they're gonna look at trends and see how you're, trending. And it's going to influence, not only your bonding capacity in a bonding situation, like how much the company can bond, it may affect the pricing of the bond. And in lending situations, it's going to influence maybe the interest rate or how much could be borrowed, there. And then also on the banking side, just in treasuries, how much cash flow are you going to have to build up to have, you know, uh, a specific account where you're earning more interest. In today's environment, we all know how interest rates have changed over the last 4 years. And so it's important to have treasury management because you can make money on your cash now. Plus, if you borrow on your line, it's costing you a lot more. So all those things are very important when it comes to those of having accurate financial data to influence those decisions.
Yeah, it goes back to something that Kevin said. The PMs are the heartbeat of the company, um, and so therefore, everything they do has an implication upstream. I was showing the dashboard earlier, and I never really talked about this dashboard, but this is essentially a cash flow dashboard where we're looking at your cost, your billings, and your cash receipts. So the blue line is the billings, and the black line is the cost, and the green line is the cash receipts. In this particular instance, whenever there is a gap between billing and cash receipt, that means that the company is funding the project. Kevin, how has the visibility into cash flow helped you plan better, um, as a project manager?
It's to have cash, right? Not use working capital and have the cash flow available to be able to fund these jobs. It's been unreal. And I like this market right here. This graph that you're showing is right where I think a PM aggressively is at. But how do we get there? We have to be aware of it. If you notice on the front end, we're about running level, which is normal. But then once you get up in that green above the black, right? Once the payment has reached above your job to date cost, you should be able to manage that, you
Mm.
know, and what happens is the first initial conversation you're going to have with somebody is like, you're billing me too much. Well, we're going to get to the point to where the bills now become slightly easier and we all can work together through it. But they're always going to try and squeeze you at the beginning. So this is a great example of that, right? Squeeze at the beginning a little bit, take 60 days to get paid, and then all of a sudden you're right where you need to be. So it's huge to be successful in a project because you can start to see your profit fades and everything with the cash flow at the beginning and then towards the middle.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's actually brings me to um, another point here. I have not been following along with the presentation. I've been so embedded in the conversations here. But you know, we talk about culture. We talk about how change is hard to implement. I'm curious, Kevin. What is the if someone is looking at trying to change their culture to shift from being reactive and sort of like focusing on the gut, how would one go about changing the culture to be more data driven? What have you seen to be sort of a good process for moving forward with that?
Oh, I won't stand too tall on the soapbox on this one, but I think the biggest thing in today's society, right, is the fact that time is essential to every single one of us. Back in the 80s and 90s, people just work 70 hours, 60, 70 hours, and those were normal days. Now it's shifting back, and we could get into that conversation. But I think the easiest way to do it is just show them how this can minimize the time in which they do. So if I'm in a project and I'm working, just as such as Pronovos, when I do a review, if I go in and I can log those changes and do those things once a week to understand what happened that week, when I come to cost of completes, I don't have to spend a day and a half prior to my cost of completes to make sure that I'm on track. Now I just open up my dashboard. I got all my notes right there. We go into the meeting. They've probably overviewed them. How can we fix the problems and how do we move forward? So that hour-long meeting is now 10 to 15 minutes. Very direct, very on time. And how do you get that culture? Show people how it works. Get out there, put your boots on the ground, uh, and show what it can do for you. The power of data can get you so much farther and to make your decisions easier, less stressful, and now you have more time to enjoy the things in life that you want, so to say.
Hey, we talk the same language, Kevin. I get it. I get it. I'm glad you do too, because I'm seeing more and more companies shifting their culture because of people like you. Brian, what do you recommend to clients trying to shift their culture?
I think there's a couple points here. One would be, getting the buy-in of top management and having their back and them being a part of the process and believing in it. But I would go another step and say, you don't want this to be a forced down approach either. That's not what I'm trying to say. Basically, we've all seen where processes have been put in place before and management doesn't, breaks the process because they're in their own ways, right? And they continue on. But so that isn't good for anybody. But you have to have their buy-in. But what I would say secondarily is not only for the top management to be involved in it, bring in that project manager, bring in those people that are going to be doing and being affected by that, and let them have some influence on it, and have some help with the decisions, because then they're going to have more buy-in to be acceptable to it than it being a push down from the top and saying, hey, this is what we need to do here, do it. So I think that would probably be the biggest, those two things, the latter probably being the biggest, is getting the PMs or the other people that are going to be impacted by it, that maybe have, their own set ways. Let them be a part of the process, and have them help see and develop those processes so that they feel a part of the process rather than it, just pushed down upon them.
Mm, yeah, that makes sense. Go ahead, Kevin.
Then I don't want to jump on top of your roof. I want to kind of piggyback right off of what Brian said right there is investment. I said it earlier, investment in human capital, right? So education, as we as project managers get into those situations and we understand what their goals are and what their missions are, then it makes it a lot easier for all of us to work towards a common goal, right? So what is a team? A group of individuals working towards a shared sense of purpose,
Mm,
education, work together, and we can do it. But not one individual can force it down, and you have to have buy-in. So I agree, Brian, 100%.
yeah, that's pretty powerful. Very powerful. You mentioned something that I want to actually bring up, because we painstakingly went through the effort of building this out to help companies shift their culture to be more data driven. The biggest challenge that I've seen PMs have as it relates to their monthly cycles is preparing for job reviews. And what we've done, and I know you're very familiar with this, Kevin, because you actually brought it up, but when you're able to organize and collect and present, gosh, hundreds of data points, and you have a checklist, like for instance, financials. If I'm a PM and I'm looking at this, I want to know exactly what's going on. If there are issues or concerns, we need to collaborate with the leadership team, whoever's running your monthly job reviews. And this is basically producing accountability. It's saving PM's time. And this is what I think we're all talking about when we, discuss moving from gut feel to more having data to help, back this up. So, lots of tools. Our primary focus was basically to try to give PMs the things that they need to be better at their job. I'm looking at a clock here, and I just want to make sure that we are able to get through any questions here. Let me see. Um, Question for you, Kevin. Um, is there a rule that, or sorry, is there a rule that specifies how many projects a PM could handle at one time?
No, I think that comes down to a hierarchical structure of your company, right? I personally, we have me as a project manager. I have an APM, I have a PE, I have a PC. So it becomes a hierarchical structure. So myself, I'm not boots on the ground as much as what I used to be, as much as I am now delegating that workload. But delegating is another facet of the business that's very tough because we're big, strong men. We can do it ourselves and we just go on down the road, right? Uh, but so there's no rule of thumb. Me personally, I don't like to see a PM if he doesn't have any structure behind him or any help behind him and he's doing everything from CTCs to purchasing to everything. I don't like to see that guy above 10 to 12 million. And that's depending on the size of your company. That's what I've been exposed to. Once you get past that, I think you're just getting the weight of the world on a guy and you start seeing personal life, work life, and everything becomes out of balance. And then there's an issue. So I don't think there's a right answer. I think there's just that's our rule of thumb, my rule of thumb right there.
No, I
Yeah,
guess what I
yeah.
would say, maybe to help in that same light, is you get to a point, probably to Kevin, where you get to the top end of what Kevin was saying, where maybe it makes sense to bring in maybe a project accountant, or a project, somebody like that, and they're helping bridge between accounting and project management, and they can help relieve some of those tasks so that you can continue to manage. So you probably get to that point where you need to look at that hierarchy, and you don't need to bring on maybe a new PM, but you need to bring on somebody to help manage all the work that that person's doing, right?
Right, right. Balance. My gosh, that's hard these days. But yeah, makes a lot of sense. So Brian, I'm just going to throw one question out to you. What's one practical tip for driving better financial decision making within an ops team that you can give?
I think we've hit on it, is
Yeah.
really what I would say improving project cash flow, because that is going to drive company cash flow, which is going to drive a lot of things. So I would say the biggest thing would be project cash flow is probably what I would leave with today. There's several, but I would say that's probably, one of the keys.
Got it. How about you, Kevin? Anything different that you'll add to that?
No, I think that's exactly it. As a project manager, if I focus on the cash flow of my project, the bigger picture is going to take care of itself. But that's what I would say. It's a huge thing. And as a project manager, right? Human capital, educate,
Yeah.
spend time with them, teach them, and take that, because at the end of the day, when we're not here anymore, what's your legacy left behind? And that's where I spend a lot of my time.
Wow. Someone once said, intuition is great until it walks out the door. um, here's my final word. I think if you want to grow, if you want to lead, if you want to learn, if you want to last, I think you got to lead with clarity, because we weren't born just to survive in business. I think we need to dominate. I think we have to do the best we can, and we need the tools to do that. So for those that are wanting to learn more, I'm just going to launch another poll here. And if you want to talk, please answer the poll, and we love to connect. So I'll leave this up for a while, and if you want to stick around, we will answer a few more of your questions. This has been great, guys. I feel like we've touched on quite a bit, and gut instinct has been around for the longest, and data has been around a long time too, but we haven't been utilizing it like we should. Any last words, Kevin, Brian?
I'll
No,
go.
I appreciate you. Go, Kevin.
Yeah, I was just saying, Bruce, I greatly appreciate you. I love what you guys are doing and the tools you're putting at project managers' hands to be successful. Um, just be excited about it and challenge some processes along the way.
I
Thanks.
love it. I love it.
Yeah, I'd say, Bruce, thanks for having me on. Kevin, it's been great working with you through this. And, there is a lot of power in data, and, it can help, make your business more successful, help your projects be more successful. So, try to look for those opportunities, because as Kevin mentioned, time is valuable, and any way that you can help to make things more efficient or effective, we all should be evaluating those. And plus, everybody wants technology at their fingertips in today's world, right? So providing that is what people desire. So looking at ways to do that is what we're talking about.
Listen, wonderful words of wisdom. I appreciate both of you for joining and dropping all the knowledge on us, and I'm sure our audience appreciates it too. Gentlemen, I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day and week. Tax time is behind us, so there's a reason to celebrate. So again, thank you. Thank you, audience. I appreciate you all.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bruce.
everybody.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Kevin.